At 60 years old, Matthew Parker sat alone in his dimly lit apartment, the air heavy with dust and memories. It was a quiet evening, and as he sipped his tea, his eyes wandered to an old box resting on a shelf. The box was small, covered in cobwebs and long forgotten. He hadn't thought about it in years, decades perhaps. The box was a relic from his past, something left behind by Clara, the woman he had loved and lost. He smiled faintly, memories of their younger days swirling in his mind. Curiosity piqued, Matthew reached for the box and gently blew the dust off. As he pried open the lid, his heart stopped. Inside were two items that shattered his peaceful moment, an old pregnancy test and a folded piece of paper. With trembling hands, Matthew unfolded the paper. It was a copy of a will, and Clara's name was at the top. She had been the heir to a mega grand company. Matthew stared at the items in shock, his mind racing. How had he missed this? How had he never opened this box before? His thoughts spiraled back to the past, to the days when everything had been different, when he had been different. He leaned back in his chair, the weight of regret heavy on his chest, and began to remember the life he had thrown away. It was the early 1980s when Matthew first met Clara. He had been working as an engineer at a power company, and life had been full of promise. Clara, a talented designer with a heart of gold, had swept into his life like a breath of fresh air. From the moment they met, there was a connection, an undeniable spark that drew them together. They met at a cafe, purely by chance. Clara had been sketching a design for a new project, and Matthew had accidentally spilled his coffee on her drawing. "Oh no, I'm so sorry," Matthew said, grabbing a napkin in a panic. Clara looked up at him, her eyes soft and understanding. "It's okay. It wasn't going well anyway," she said with a light laugh. They exchanged a few more words, and before he knew it, Matthew found himself sitting across from her, talking for hours. They spoke about everything, her passion for design, his love for machines, their dreams for the future. It was easy, effortless. Over the next few months, their relationship blossomed. Matthew and Clara spent their days dreaming about the future, planning a life full of adventure and love. They had it all, or so it seemed. Matthew's job at the power company paid well, and Clara's design business was growing steadily. They spoke often of getting married, having children, and building a life together. "You're my forever, Matt," Clara would say, resting her head on his chest after long days spent together. "And you're mine," Matthew would reply, holding her close. But life had other plans for them. Everything changed when Matthew lost his job. The company he had worked for went under, and suddenly the life they had built together began to crumble. Matthew was devastated. He had always prided himself on being the provider, the man who could take care of everything. Without his job, he felt lost, like a failure. At first, Clara was supportive. "Well, get through this together," she said, holding his hand. "It's just a setback, Matt. We'll find a way." But as the weeks turned into months, Matthew's frustration grew. The job market was tough, and every rejection letter chipped away at his confidence. He began drinking more, spending his days at the bar and his nights lashing out at Clara. "You don't understand," he shouted one evening after another failed job interview. "You don't know what it's like to be a man who can't even provide for his own household." Clara flinched but remained calm. "I'm trying to help, Matt. We can work through this, but you need to stop pushing me away." But Matthew couldn't stop. The pressure, the anger, the sense of inadequacy, it all consumed him. He started to take it out on Clara, belittling her for the smallest things. At first, it was just words, but soon it became more. "You're useless," he spat one evening after Clara accidentally burned dinner. "You can't even do something as simple as this right." Clara stood there, tears streaming down her face, but she didn't respond. She didn't know this Matthew. The man she loved had been replaced by someone bitter and cruel. The turning point came when Matthew, in a drunken rage, slapped Clara during one of their arguments. It was a moment that would forever haunt him. Clara, stunned and heartbroken, packed her things the next morning and left. "One day you'll understand what you've lost," she said quietly before walking out the door. She handed him the small box. "This is all I have left to give you." Matthew didn't stop her. He was too consumed by his pride and anger to see the truth, that he had destroyed the one thing in his life that truly mattered. Matthew was spiraling out of control. After losing Clara, he sank deeper into despair. spending his nights in bars and his days wandering aimlessly. It was during one of those dark nights that he met Vivian. Vivian was everything Clara wasn't: young, vibrant, and wealthy. She swept into Matthew's life like a whirlwind, offering him a way out of his misery. They moved quickly, with Matthew soon living in her luxurious apartment and enjoying a life of excess. For a while, it seemed like everything was perfect. Vivian promised to help him find a new job, to give him the life he thought he deserved, but something was always off. Vivian treated Matthew like an accessory, a trophy to show off at social events. She never talked about love, never mentioned a future with him. And yet, Matthew allowed himself to believe that this was better than what he had with Clara. He convinced himself that this life of luxury was what he needed to be happy. One evening, as they lounged in her lavish apartment, Matthew finally voiced his concerns. "Vivian, where is this going?" he asked, his voice laced with uncertainty. Vivian glanced at him, her expression cold. "Going? Matthew, we're just having fun. Don't ruin it with all this future talk." Matthew frowned. "But don't you want more? A family? Something real?" Vivian's laugh was harsh. "A family? No, thanks. I'm not interested in being tied down. This is enough for me." Her words hit Matthew like a punch to the gut. He had thought that maybe, just maybe, Vivian could fill the void Clara had left. But now he realized that he had been fooling himself. Vivian didn't love him, and she never would. The final blow came when Vivian announced one morning that she was pregnant. "Pregnant?" Matthew repeated, a glimmer of hope sparking in his chest. A child. This could be their chance to build something real. Vivian's face remained expressionless. "Yes, but don't get any ideas, Matthew. This doesn't change anything between us." "What do you mean?" Matthew asked, his heart sinking. "We're going to have a family. This is—" "No," Vivian interrupted, her tone icy. "I don't want a family with you. I'll take care of this on my own." Matthew was stunned. He had thought the pregnancy would bring them closer, but instead it was driving them apart. Vivian was clear. She wanted nothing to do with him, and she had no intention of letting him be a part of the child's life. A few months later, she cut him off completely, leaving Matthew alone and without the child he had hoped to raise. It was a devastating blow, but by then, Matthew had come to realize that everything he had with Vivian was built on lies. She had used him for her own convenience, just as he had used her as a way to escape his pain. Matthew's life quickly spiraled downward. The luxury, the parties, and the lifestyle Vivian had introduced him to all disappeared overnight. He found himself back where he started, jobless, broke, and worst of all, utterly alone. The realization hit him hard one dreary afternoon as he sat in a dingy apartment he could barely afford. That's when he thought of Clara again, the only woman who had truly loved him. A wave of guilt crashed over him. He had pushed her away, blamed her for his own failures, and allowed his bitterness to destroy their relationship. Now, all that was left was regret. But as much as he wanted to reach out to her, he didn't know where she was or how to find her. Years passed, and Matthew couldn't shake the thought of Clara and the child she had carried. Did she raise their child alone? What had happened to them? He wondered if she had moved on, married someone else, or if she even thought of him anymore. These thoughts consumed him until one day he decided he couldn't live with the not knowing. Matthew began his search for Clara. He hired private investigators, searched through public records, and asked anyone who might have known her. He hit dead end after dead end, but he refused to give up. He owed it to her and to their child to make things right, even if it was too late. The search took years, but finally, Matthew tracked her down. Clara was living in a modest house in a quiet neighborhood. She had never remarried. Their child, a boy named Nathan, had just graduated from university and was starting a career in finance. Matthew couldn't believe it. He had a son who had grown up without him. Matthew's heart raced as he stood outside Clara's front door. He had rehearsed what he would say 1,000 times, but now that he was there, words escaped him. With a deep breath, he knocked on the door. After a few moments, the door opened, and there she was. Clara, older, wiser, but just as beautiful as he remembered. Her eyes widened in surprise when she saw him. "Matthew?" she said softly, almost as if she couldn't believe it was really him. "Clara," Matthew began, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I needed to find you." "I needed to? Why are you here, Matthew?" she interrupted, her tone calm but firm. "I'm here because I was wrong," he admitted, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I was so wrong. I pushed you away when I should have held you close. I was too proud, too blind to see how much I hurt you. I wanted to see you, to see our son, and to ask for your forgiveness." Clara stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she sighed and stepped aside. "Come in." Matthew followed her inside, his eyes scanning the cozy living room. Pictures of Nathan lined the walls, a testament to the life Clara had built without him. "How did you find me?" Clara asked, her tone guarded but curious. "I've been searching for years," Matthew said, the weight of his words heavy with emotion. "I couldn't stop thinking about you or Nathan. After everything that happened, I needed to know how you were both doing." Clara's expression softened, but her eyes remained cautious. "You disappeared from our lives, Matthew. You chose a different path." "I know," Matthew replied, his voice thick with regret. "I was foolish, consumed by my own pride and pain. I thought I could drown my sorrows with distractions, but it never worked. I've missed so much, and I can't take it back. I just wanted to see you, to see Nathan, and to ask for your forgiveness." Clara studied him for a long moment. "Forgiveness is a process, Matthew. I've moved on with my life. I had to for Nathan's sake. He deserves a stable environment." "I understand," Matthew said, his heart heavy. "I don't expect you to let me back into your life. I just want to make things right, even if it's too late." Clara sighed, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "Nathan's away right now, but I can tell him you came by. It'll let him decide if he wants to see you." Matthew felt a surge of hope. "Thank you, Clara. I would love that." Days turned into a week before Clara finally told Nathan about Matthew's visit. Sitting across from her son at the kitchen table, Clara watched as Nathan took in the news. "Dad came to see you?" Nathan asked, a mix of surprise and skepticism on his face. "Why now?" Clara hesitated, searching for the right words. "He's been looking for us for a long time. He's changed, Nathan. He wants to apologize, to meet you." Nathan frowned, stirring his cereal absent-mindedly. "What does that mean for us? I've heard stories about him, but I don't know if I want to meet a stranger who abandoned us." "Your feelings are valid," Clara replied, leaning forward. "But he has expressed a desire to make amends. You don't have to see him if you don't want to. It's entirely your choice." Nathan sighed, pushing his bowl away. "I'm not sure, Mom. What if he hurts you again? What if he's still the same person he was?" Clara reached out, placing a comforting hand on Nathan's. "I've had my share of hurt, and I wouldn't put you in that position. I've built a good life for us. Meeting him doesn't mean we have to let him back into our lives completely. You can meet him, talk to him, and decide for yourself." Nathan sat back, pondering her words. After a long silence, he finally nodded. "Okay, I'll meet him, but if he tries to hurt you, I won't hesitate to cut him off." The following week, Clara arranged for Nathan and Matthew to meet at a local cafe. As they approached the venue, Clara felt a mixture of anxiety and hope. She wanted to protect Nathan, but she also understood that closure could only come through this confrontation. Matthew arrived early, pacing nervously outside the cafe. He spotted Clara and Nathan approaching and straightened, trying to compose himself. When Clara introduced Nathan, Matthew felt a wave of emotion wash over him as he took in the young man who was a reflection of himself. "Hi, Nathan," Matthew said, extending a hand. Nathan looked at Matthew's hand for a moment before shaking it firmly. "So you're my father?"
Matthew nodded, swallowing hard. "I am, and I'm sorry for not being there for you. I know I can't change the past, but I want to get to know you." They sat down, and the conversation began awkwardly. Nathan shared a bit about his life, his studies, his interests, and his plans for the future. Matthew listened intently, proud yet overwhelmed by the weight of missed moments. "Why didn't you reach out sooner?" Nathan finally asked, a hint of accusation in his tone. "I was afraid," Matthew admitted. "I thought I didn't deserve to be a part of your life after everything I put your mother through. I was trying to make sense of my own mistakes before I reached out, but I should have known that you both deserved better." Nathan glanced at Clara, who offered him an encouraging nod. "I get that you've been through a lot, but it doesn't excuse what you did. My mom raised me alone, and she did an incredible job. I'm grateful for her, but you? I'm not asking for forgiveness," Matthew interjected, his voice earnest. "I just want to understand you. I want to be a part of your life, even if it's just from a distance." Nathan looked down, clearly conflicted. I don't know if I can trust you. You were a ghost for most of my life. What's to stop you from disappearing again? Matthew nodded, understanding the weight of Nathan's words. You're right. I can't promise I won't hurt you, but I promise I won't disappear again. I'm here now, and I'm willing to work for your trust. The conversation shifted slowly, and Nathan began to share more about his passions. They talked about music, sports, and even their favorite movies. For a moment, it felt like there was hope, like maybe they could build something from the ashes of their past. But as they continued, Clara watched from a distance, her heart heavy with mixed emotions. She saw the glimmer of connection between them, but also the potential for pain. She knew Nathan had been hurt before, and she wasn't sure if he was ready to let Matthew back into his life. Months passed after that fateful meeting. Nathan decided to give Matthew a chance, but it wasn't an easy process. They met regularly, slowly building their relationship through small conversations and shared interests. Matthew was always respectful of Nathan's boundaries, eager to prove he was serious about being a father, even if it meant starting from scratch. As for Clara, she remained cautious. She appreciated Matthew's efforts, but she wasn't ready to let him back into her life completely. She had worked hard to create a peaceful life for Nathan, and she wasn't willing to risk that stability. Yet, she was happy to see her son forging a connection with his father. One evening, as Clara prepared dinner, Nathan entered the kitchen, a bright smile on his face. Mom, guess what? Dad invited me to a concert next week. Nathan exclaimed, excitement bubbling in his voice. Clara turned, her heart skipping a beat. Really? Are you going? Yeah, I think I will. I want to give him a chance, Mom. He's trying, and I can see he's different, Nathan said, his expression earnest. Clara's heart swelled with pride for her son. Just remember to protect yourself, Nathan. It's great that you're willing to try, but keep your expectations in check. Nathan nodded. I will. Thanks for always being here for me, Mom. I know I can always count on you. As the weeks turned into months, Nathan and Matthew continued to strengthen their bond.